The Giants outscored the Rockies 24-8 in a 3-game sweep, and going back to their last 2 games against the Cardinals and really starting with Buster Posey Day, the Giants have won 5 in a row and they've outscored their opponents 41-18. So we'll break down everything that's gone right for the Giants recently, some roster moves including Evan Longoria coming back next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. And coming up on today's show, we're going to react to the Giants just finishing off a 3-game sweep of the Colorado Rockies. It is something we said coming into this series that actually we were looking out for as a possibility. I said that at least 2 out of 3, anything less than that would be a big disappointment. The Rockies and the Giants came into this series with identical 16-12 records, but we talked about how run differential was a better predictor of future performance than actual record itself being a predictor of future performance. And sure enough, the Rockies, who came in with a negative run differential into this series, end up looking like who we thought they were. And the Giants, who were even underperforming their run differential a little bit, improve upon it. And now they have a plus 40 run differential, and that has an expected record of 20-11. So they continue, as they have for much of the season, to underperform their actual record by 1 win. And that just bodes well moving forward. It basically is just saying they're not lucky to be 19-12 like perhaps the Rockies were, fortunate, luck, whatever you want to call it, to be 16-12. Well, guess what? Now the Rockies are 16-15 with a negative 29 run differential, so they still have room to fall. And hey, maybe the Giants can keep it going when they see the Rockies in really just a few days. They just played the Cardinals and the Rockies, and now they're going to play the Cardinals and the Rockies this time on the road. But, what a great series it was. As I said in the open, Giants outscored Colorado 24-8. And they've outscored their opponents, the Cardinals and the Rockies, in this 5-game winning streak, 41-18. So what were they doing right immediately before that? Well, the Giants were scuffling to score and giving up a lot of runs. And that's baseball sometimes. You're going to go from one extreme to the other. But on the whole, the Giants have been a good team this year. And a lot of it has had to do, with this turnaround in recent days with guys coming back and getting healthy. They had all these normal injuries. They also had a bunch of COVID IL stints, and it hurt them for a little stretch of time there. But now Brandon Belt is back, LaMonte Wade Jr. is back, and their presence has been felt. Mike Yastrzemski comes back from the COVID IL. Jock Peterson comes back from that little nagging groin injury, although he was like 0 for 20 since coming back. He did pick up a hit, a very soft infield hit that just hugged the line and kissed the bag, as Mike Krukow said, in this game today against the Rockies. Alex Cobb, another example of kind of the peripheral underlying numbers suggesting that better things were ahead for the Giants, goes out there and shows that better things were in fact ahead for him, as he allowed 1 run in 5 1/3. It was debatable as to whether or not it was an earned run. Initially, there was an error called in that inning, so it was an unearned run, but it got changed later on to an earned run. But his earned run average coming into the game was 4.8. We did a whole segment, I think it was just yesterday or the day before, talking about how that number was going to come way down, and the peripherals were what was suggesting that, and it came all the way down to 3.98 after this outing, and the peripheral numbers are still much lower than that, so he's got even more room for run prevention to improve. And so things are looking up for the San Francisco Giants. They did get another guy back from the injured list today, Evan Longoria was finally activated and he made his season debut and started at third base and hit third. There's a little bit of a question as to whether or not it's the right move to hit him third. And honestly, in all the time that Farhan Zaidi has been here and Gabe Kapler has been here, Kapler came in a year after Farhan Zaidi, the one thing that I find myself disagreeing with frequently that they do is hitting Evan Longoria in the middle of the lineup against right-handed pitching. I don't quite understand why it is that they do that, given, I see it with my eyes and the numbers back it up. Against right-handed pitching, he puts the ball on the ground a lot, and there's some swing and miss. I just feel like his swing is a little bit exploitable with good right-handed pitching, whether it's kind of sliders away or fastballs in. He can get jammed, and I just don't love when he comes up in a big situation against a righty. And that happened numerous times today, and it immediately looked like a bit of a questionable call. There's just a hint of the old school kind of respect for the veteran that seems to go into it with Evan Longoria. Kapler and Evan Longoria were former teammates with the Tampa Bay Rays. And look, I'm not saying Longoria is just unplayable against a right-handed pitcher, but I think like if it wasn't Evan Longoria and this was a younger, less established player, I don't think they would really put him in the middle of the lineup. And that's really what I'm saying. There is some of it could be like later in the game when the opponent maybe wants to go to a lefty reliever because you've got the top of the lineup and you've got Wade and Belt 1 and 2, and you want to go to a lefty there. It does leave Longoria in the middle of that order where he is really dangerous against a lefty. So that you do have to factor that in a little bit. But first game back, I just don't really love placing Longoria in the middle of the lineup. The day before, I believe it was, because something they've been doing a lot is going left, left, right, left, left, right, left, left, right through the lineup when there's a righty on the mound, and the opposite, right, right, left, right, right, left, when there's a lefty on the mound. They've seemed to favor that lineup construction, and it makes sense for a number of reasons, partially what I was just saying. It prevents the opponent from like bringing in a righty and getting a string of righties in your lineup. But the other day, I think it was 2 days ago, the Giants went Wade, Belt, Yastrzemski, Peterson, so 4 straight righties. And I just thought they could have done that again today. Really, you could have gone with the exact same 4 and then put Longoria maybe 5th, and then Crawford, and then Estrada, and then Luis González, and then Joey Bart. Something like that. I'm not sure it matters as much as we think it does. Lineup construction is not generally as important as we act like it is. And not like I said, but to follow up on that and to give an example of that, the Giants scored 7 runs and won the game rather easily. But in the first inning and then later on, I think it was in the third or maybe in the fourth, Longoria did come up with guys on base and wasn't able to get it done. I think he went 0 for 5. He had 3 strikeouts and 2 ground balls, which is kind of exactly what I'm saying. So coming up next, we'll put a bow on that discussion, but I also want to talk about yesterday's starting pitching performance by Alex Wood, and how about the perhaps phantom injury that the Giants used to bring Evan Longoria onto the roster. We said it was going to be a roster crunch, and they use perhaps a creative way to get Longoria back on the roster. And also, oh, by the way, the Giants made a trade. So all of that in just a minute. But first, with spring in the air, it's a time of renewal and growth personally and professionally. As your small business grows, LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier to find the people you want to talk to faster and for free. Create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience, so you can quickly prioritize the people you want to talk to and you want to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonmlb. That's linkedin.com/lockedonmlb to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right. As promised, I want to talk about Alex Wood a little bit. Also, the Giants making a little bit of a trade here. Not a little bit of a trade. That's a weird way to put it. Giants making a trade and a phantom injury, perhaps. And so we'll start there with the phantom injury in just a second. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast. Recaps of MLB games with analysis from our local experts, taking fans through the season like no other network, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. So yeah, they put Jake McGee on the injured list, and I think that a lot of people, perhaps correctly, are thinking that this is one of those phantom injuries. Here's the thing. Here's my take on this. I think that every player in professional baseball always has something going on that could warrant going on the injured list. Like, nobody feels 100% all the time. And so is it perhaps that they're stretching things a little bit by saying that he's got low back tightness? Perhaps. But also, we talked about how there was a serious roster crunch, and the only alternative seemed to be optioning Luis González, which he didn't deserve. He did not deserve to go down. And we talked about how they currently were at 13 pitchers and 13 position players, and it was a possibility to option a pitcher or put someone on the injured list. So by putting McGee on the injured list and activating Longoria, they were, for today's game, sitting at 14 position players and 12 pitchers. I'm not sure that that's going to last, in which case they would still have to make some kind of corresponding move. In order to bring another pitcher onto the roster, you would have to send out a position player, and I'm not sure exactly who that would be. Luis González, unfortunately for him, still makes among the most sense. And the reason for this is that there aren't a lot of optionable players who are position players for the Giants. You can't option Dubon. You can't option Estrada. And the only other guys are like Mike Yastrzemski and Austin Slater, and I don't think they certainly are going anywhere themselves. And so Luis González may, unfortunately for him, eventually be an odd man out. And what do you do when you have to add Tommy La Stella as well? So that's going to be a continuing conversation. The Giants did make a trade today for a left-handed hitting infielder, and Andy Baggerly speculated that this could mean that they don't have a lot of confidence in Tommy La Stella's ability to get back. I wasn't going there at all, because he's been playing in this rehab assignment in AAA and playing in the field. I haven't been watching, so I don't know what the reports are, but it could be Baggerly was right about in his speculation about the Giants targeting Gabe Kapler, and I thought he was off the rails with that, and he was right about that. So I'm not one to second guess when I think that Baggerly is off. And in this case, I think that he's off, but he may be right, is basically what I'm trying to say. So we'll talk about that trade a little bit later on. I do just want to mention Joey Bart. I meant to mention him earlier. Joey Bart had a big hit in this game today. Curt Casali had a big game yesterday. In fact, the Giants' 8 and 9 hitters in the lineup yesterday didn't make an out. And I saw a note on the broadcast today that it was like the first time since at least 1909, perhaps when they started keeping track of some stat that they didn't keep track of before then, that both the 8 and 9 hitters in a Giants lineup did not make an out. I guess now that I think about it, that probably had a lot to do with pitchers being in the lineup, but still, it's an impressive feat for the bottom of your lineup. And they came up a lot too. I mean, Luis González had 2 plate appearances. Austin Slater pinch hit for him and had 2. And then Curt Casali had 4. So 8 plate appearances, and they got on base every single time. So a good game for Casali, and kind of the calls for Curt Casali to be more of the, quote, everyday catcher for the Giants got a little bit louder. And I understand that. And I think that it has shifted in recent days. In the beginning of the year, I just want to be clear that full-time catcher for the San Francisco Giants seems to be 2/3. You're going to play 2/3 of the time if you're the primary catcher. That's what Buster Posey did. That's kind of what we were seeing this year in the beginning with Joey Bart. And another thing is that they don't start a catcher in a day game after a night game. So you just don't expect that, no matter what the situation is. So today, even though Casali had the good game last night, it was always going to be Bart, because, I mean, maybe in towards the end of the year, they might make some exceptions, but in early May, they're going to stick to this plan. And the thing is, though, it was initially 2/3 Bart, 1/3 Casali, and it's, if anything, more of a 50-50 split right now, and it was kind of trending more towards Casali, perhaps being 2/3 of the recipient of playing time 2/3 of the time. So they did make that pinch hitting decision for Joey Bart a few days ago, bringing in Jock Peterson with the bases loaded and 1 out in a 5-2 game. We said at the time, sticking by it, it was the right call when you needed contact and a lefty. The Rockies didn't have a lefty up in the bullpen, and you're able to get Jock Peterson against a righty in a situation like that. I think it's kind of a no-brainer, but I'm not quite sure how Bart felt about it. But coming into today, Bart had a big hit. I mean, in this game today, Bart had a big hit. He ended up on the day going 1 for 3. He did strike out 2 times, which is pretty much par for the course for Joey Bart. He's basically struck out in about 50% of his plate appearances on the year, which leads the major leagues if you set the minimum to around 50 plate appearances. But I just must continue to point out, he's still managed overall league average offense. He's got a 100 weighted runs created plus. And at the catcher position, league average on the season is an 81 weighted runs created plus. So it is a very weird slash line for Joey Bart, right? He's hitting 167, but he's got a 315 on base. His walk rate is 13.7%, which is significantly better than average. He's also hit for some power when he's gotten his hits. So if you add that all together, by weighted runs created plus, that is technically league average. But again, 20 points better than average for a catcher. And Curt Casali, after his 3 for 3 with a walk night, also above league average for catchers. So as bad as the Giants have kind of been in a lot of ways, they've technically been better than their peers at the catcher position. And so I think we got a little bit spoiled with Buster Posey, and we are hopefully seeing in retrospect, even being more grateful for Buster Posey. But I think that currently they can live with what they've gotten out of the position, and that they've actually somehow, it might not seem that way, but in reality been better than most teams at that position. And I think Casali is a super strong defensive catcher, and Joey Bart has not been perfect. And there's a lot of people, I think, criticizing his framing. The strike zone box doesn't help because sometimes the thing is, it's hard to catch like 97 with sink and movement. When it's away from the target, you're often going to, when you're having to stab at the ball away from your target, it's hard to frame that pitch. And so it's not unique to Bart or Casali or anybody. If you watch games around the league, you see this every night. Like catchers, there's a ball that's technically in the zone, but they're not able to frame it because it's away from the target. So is Bart a perfect framer? No, but actually by these metrics and by my eyes even, I do think that he's done a pretty good job framing. And Curt Casali, same thing. Actually, they have the same strike rate on pitches in the, quote, shadow zone, which is how we judge framed pitches. How many strikes are you getting on borderline pitches, essentially? What is the rate of called strikes on those pitches? And they're both at around, I think it's 49%, and the league average is like 47%. So a little bit better than that. And that's what I've seen. That's what the numbers say. So, and then blocking and then kind of being a leader of the pitching staff. I think Bart's done a decent job in a tough situation, and to deal with some of the strikeout issues that he's had, to be able to persevere. And this single he got today, it was a single. It wasn't like a launched ball to the pull side. He kind of shortened up a little bit, went up the middle and hit a big single in an 0-2 count when it looked like a strikeout was inevitable. So good for him. Certainly they're not in a perfect spot at the position, but it's growing pains, and league average is so bad. Like, we just need to keep that in mind. League average offense in general is down, but especially at the catcher position, it is the worst offensive position in the game. And Bart has been much better than league average. If you take into account the on base, that's the thing. Like, we've talked about this before, but his chase rate is so far down from where it was in 2020. But unfortunately, the contact rate is also down from where it was in 2020. So if he can kind of combine the improvements that he's made in terms of not chasing as much and the contact that he made in 2020 in terms of not swinging and missing as much, there's certainly more potential. And so this is hopefully not the best of Joey Bart, and hopefully he can improve upon this. Anyway, coming up next, we're going to talk a little bit about the pitching performance by Alex Wood, just give him some credit for the nice game he pitched the other night, and also the trade that the Giants made, and we'll speculate about Tommy La Stella a little bit, and does it, in fact, say anything about him that the Giants made this move? So all of that in just a minute. But first, imagine dipping your finger into that plastic tub of birthday cake frosting. Wow, that just made my mouth water. And then opening your eyes and realizing that it was only 150 calories and you got 16 grams of protein out of it. Wow, that is what it's like to eat a birthday cake puff from Built. I just received my birthday cake puffs, and I have never had anything like this before. They're available right now, and we can't promise that they'll be there tomorrow, so get them now at Built.com. And if you haven't tried the puffs, I'll let you in on a little secret, because that's what friends do. A chocolate-covered marshmallow protein bar. Yeah, you heard me. Delicious flavored marshmallow covered in 100% real chocolate. Make every day your birthday with Built's birthday cake puffs. Built has taken the delicious experience of biting into a fresh slice of birthday cake and robed it in 100% white chocolate and added sprinkles. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, as promised, a little credit to Alex Wood for having a nice rebound game yesterday, and the Giants making a trade, and then we'll get you a little bit set for this upcoming road trip that the Giants are about to embark upon. So the trade that the Giants made, they announced this morning. They made a trade with the Seattle Mariners, their third trade in 3 weeks. Remember, they made the Mike Ford trade, forever Giant Mike Ford, who was DFA'd to add the player they added today to the 40-man roster. So if and when the Giants win the World Series this year, Mike Ford will be the answer to that fun question, the most random player from the season to get a World Series ring. Mike Ford played in, 2 games? He had a big hit that didn't lead to a win, but the Mike Ford era ends in San Francisco today with this DFA. And then also Kevin Padlo was acquired from the Mariners as well. But today, the Giants made a trade with the Mariners, acquiring infielder Donovan Walton in exchange for Prelander Berroa. Completely butchering that name, I apologize. But Berroa was acquired in the Sam Dyson trade in 2019 that also landed them Jalen Davis, who was designated for assignment about a month ago and ended up with the Red Sox, by the way. So the long-term kind of returns on the Sam Dyson trade not looking great, except they do land Donovan Walton, and Prelander Berroa was actually off to a pretty good start for High A Eugene. So we're going to look at some of the numbers for those two and talk about what could the Giants possibly have been looking for when they made this deal with the Mariners. Like, why did they acquire this lefty infielder? I do find it a little bit interesting because they had just acquired Isan Diaz from the Miami Marlins, and he's also a left-handed infielder. So it's not necessarily just a move for upper minors depth at a position of need. Like, they kind of have some depth, especially when you talk about Tommy La Stella being close to returning, or so we thought. But for Donovan Walton, he, like I said, is a left-handed infielder. He can play second and short. I'm just trying to see what his playing time has been like. He has played, he's actually moved around a lot. He's played in the outfield, in left field. He's played at shortstop. He's played at third, and he's played at second. So surprise, surprise, the Giants targeting a versatile player. And also I find it interesting when we look at projection systems, the Zips projection system and also Steamer actually peg him for at least league average offense. And so it's a player, you don't often see a player who has very little major league experience, and the major league experience he does have, he's been 40 points below average by weighted runs created plus, but the projection systems peg him for roughly league average offense. So personally, when I look at a move like this, I don't really think it speaks necessarily to Tommy La Stella, but it is a little bit interesting considering what I just said. They acquired another lefty middle infielder in Isan Diaz recently. They have Tommy La Stella coming back, and now you add Donovan Walton. So it could certainly mean something about Tommy La Stella, although I think that they've actually gotten pretty good production out of the second base position this year with Thairo Estrada, and Wilmer Flores can play there if Estrada were to fall off. I've definitely had my questions and concerns about Estrada. Doesn't quite get on base enough, hits a lot of balls on the ground, and Mauricio Dubon, I think, is more suited for a role as a platoon player against left-handed pitching. So looking through kind of the numbers for Donovan Walton, I like the player. I'm intrigued by the player. He does not strike out a lot. He commands the strike zone pretty well, and not a ton of power, but I'm intrigued by the player. Looking at Prelander Baroa, the dude had a 0.68 earned run average in 4 starts for High A Eugene, 13 1/3 innings, 34% strikeout rate. Command has been an issue for Baroa. His walk rate was up around 13%. It was at the same level last year. So he can get some Ks, but he also is a little bit wild. And he was acquired in the Sam Dyson trade, has been in the organization since 2019, but this is the end of the line. So he is a starting pitcher. He is someone who Fangraphs ranked as the Giants' 42nd best prospect, and he goes to the Seattle Mariners organization after this trade today. So last thing I want to cover, and we will talk about any Tommy La Stella updates as they become available. I've been thinking he could be back soon, but I guess it is something certainly to watch out for. But just want to mention Alex Wood, nice start for him. He did end up giving up 7 hits in 5 1/3 innings, but no earned runs, and lowered his earned run average on the season to 3.6. Giants bullpen in the series, besides Jake McGee, also was very good. Jake McGee, the Giants won 8-5 in the first game of the series, but it was 8-2 going into the 9th, and then they led 9-1 in the second game, and then Jake McGee gave up a run. So 4 of the Giants, of half of the 8 runs that the Giants allowed in this series with the Rockies were Jake McGee giving up runs in the 9th. So it's not surprising that they put him on the injured list. He's another guy who, of course, cannot be optioned. So that is why using this IL stint made a lot of sense, even though you're technically not allowed to do it if the player's not actually injured. But like I said, they're all kind of technically injured all the time, in my opinion. So that's that. Coming up now, the Giants go to St. Louis and Colorado to see the 2 teams we just saw. The Cardinals have had some trouble with the Baltimore Orioles, at least in game 1 of the series, but they're playing the Orioles right now, and I think we're going to see a lefty in the first game. So that, we'll see that left-handed lineup. Anyway, coming up tomorrow, I'm actually going to be talking with Paul Holden from Locked On Rockies. We're going to talk more about this series. I'm going to try to drive home some of the good things from the Giants' perspective. We'll also talk about this upcoming series in Colorado. The Rockies have played much better in Colorado, so we'll talk about what to expect from that series. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen. Now make your second listen Locked On MLB. Paul Francis Sullivan, please call him Sully, brings you his unique perspective on the majors past and present, free and available wherever you get podcasts. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out a lot, so thank you in advance, and thank you to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thank you so much for listening. Stay locked on Giants.